wonderful. Welcome to my channel. Hi guys, how are you doing? I was all set to go for a walk, but I have an incredible stomach ache. This time, I don't know why, because I haven't been eating out or anything like that. So I think I'm just going to wait and see what happens, and then if it doesn't go away, I'll just go home. Guys, I stopped off at home for a while and I'm okay. So I'm going to try to go for my walk, maybe close by. Like I'm an hour late for my usual walk time, but I still think that I should get some walking done. The air is so sickly today. What a difference from a couple of days ago. But what can you do? It's not a very good summer, I guess, because it seems to be going from bad to worse. And I remember having a summer like this a while back before when my mom was alive, and it was so depressing for both of us. The weather does affect people very negatively, doesn't it? And, I'm hearing that all over the world there are torrential rains. It's unbelievable. People are dying. People are sick. And I just don't understand how some people manage to survive it. I can't. I hate this. It doesn't make me want to feel like doing anything. I'm not used to feeling like this, and quite frankly, I'm not my typical self. Although I am trying to keep up with the walks, I'm not my typical self this summer. I feel something in the air that is so different. It's not a good feeling, and so I'm hoping that we do get some nice weather, some decent weather. What can I say? So I have decided that I think I'm going to be talking to you a little bit later on about the final part of the Amelia Earhart conclusion, and I'll probably be telling you what my opinion of what probably happened would be. And it's, we'll never know. And it's unfortunate that it's still a mystery, because these were two incredible human beings, Fred and Amelia, and they don't deserve to have a case still open on them. Even if we could find their remains, it's not likely they're still alive, because Amelia was born in the 1800s, and so it would not be likely that she'd still be alive. But still, we want to know what happened, where they actually ended up. And also, I don't know if you've been hearing anything about the Titan sub implosion, but I have been watching some very fascinating documentaries. Sorry about the camera flipping back and forth. And I can only say that I think I was pretty much on the right track when I was talking about the weakness of the materials. And of course, everybody predicted that it was not going to be a safe trip. It's so unfortunate. And I think they do have some audio, but it's not people screaming, okay? They do have some audio. And because guys, you have to figure, if you have an audio of screaming, that means bodies are still intact. So yeah, it's a weird one. And so I wish that they had still stayed intact. You know what I'm saying? And it's too bad that the implosion had to happen so quickly and so drastically, and you know, all those thousands of feet under the water. No, it's not likely that anybody would have ever survived something like that. I shouldn't be having this, but I'm thirsty. So I think that now is a good time for me to get started on the discussion of Amelia Earhart and the expedition, a very recent one, to find any evidence or remains at all. And so I have to leave. Sorry about that, but somebody pulled up and was acting silly, so I left. And so I don't like to take chances, you know what I'm saying? And so okay, I'm looking for my notes. I keep them in my camera, so okay. We are going to begin the discussion on Robert Ballard, who was indeed quite an important guys, I have to leave. Hi everybody. And so I think now would be a nice time to begin another discussion on the last part of the Amelia Earhart case. And this part is going to be focused on the expedition, a recent expedition in search of more evidence or any evidence and remains of Fred and Amelia and what happened to the plane. And so, all right, let's start with Robert Ballard. Now, who is Robert Ballard? Robert Ballard was a very important person. He was the finder of lost and extremely significant items. In 1985, for example, he discovered the Titanic lying at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And of course, as we all know, that lay scattered in pieces. And he also found a Nazi battleship. It was called Bismarck. and recently 18 shipwrecks in the Black Sea. And so I know that the Black Sea was a very important sea route in medieval and ancient trade. So it was global. It was on the route of the Silk Road. So goodness knows how many ships were lost at sea there. So guys, Ballard wanted so badly to find the remains of Amelia Earhart's Electra, and possibly of her as well, because it, it was approaching a century, and I believe it was in 2019 that he did this, and so he has since passed away. But he wanted so desperately to find it because she is, of course, a great American hero. And, to leave it unclosed like this is really, it's a shame. If we could only put some closure on it and find something, it would be better than nothing. And so, however, he was very reluctant to, put all of his efforts into something like this because so many people before him had failed. Also, it was a long shot. It was a long shot. And so we don't know exactly um, how many months he thought it over before he finally decided. And I will show you and tell you exactly why he decided to finally embark on this expedition to search for Amelia. And so one of the other reasons why Ballard was kind of reluctant to begin this expedition is because he felt that the area, which was generally not pinned, even though it was investigated in 1937, the general area and location was just too large. And so it is extremely difficult to search for debris at the bottom of the ocean, for example. And so Ballard would be taking on a very big challenge because he wouldn't have known exactly where to start looking. Like the general area, yes, but it was very, very, very large. And so that was the other problem. And then it seems as though a group of explorers came into the picture. And so, and they found clues for Ballard. And they actually wanted to begin the expedition more badly than Ballard did. And so they gave him certain evidence. And it was so compelling that Ballard changed his mind, and he decided that he would search. Well, first of all, when he saw the evidence, he decided that he knew immediately where to search for the plane, the Electra. And so he was actually quite stunned. And so he knew where the plane would be. He was assuming that he knew. And he set course for a very remote search in the Pacific Island nation of Kiribati to recover any parts of the plane that he would possibly be able to find. And so, guys, can you imagine? Ballard was 77 in 2019. At least that's what I think it is, 2019. And so if this expedition would succeed, the explorer would solve an enduring 20th century mystery and transfer the legacy of discovery to a new generation of oceanic scientists and researchers. Now, Ballard himself was a scientific investigator. He was an explorer. So that was his field of work. That's what he did. He searched for great lost things of the past. And so it would have been a very important expedition. And so I guess you're asking, well, what was the evidence, that convinced Ballard to begin this expedition? Well, it was the Bevington object. And I'll explain to you exactly what that was. And so Ballard accepted the Navy's version up until then, of what actually happened to Amelia on July the 2nd, 1937, near the end of her flight. And so the aviator and her crew, Fred, vanished over the Pacific after a very lengthy and costly search. The Navy did conclude on July the 18th, 1937, that the two died shortly after crashing into the ocean. And that is a very pliable and viable. It's a very, how do I say this? Pliable. It's a very logical theory. It's the most logical. It's the most commonly believed theory. And so, but in 2012, everything changed for Ballard. So what happened in 2012 is that an old friend of Ballard's presented him with a black and white photograph. And this old friend, his name was Campbell, and he was the Assistant Secretary of the State of USA for the East Asian and Pacific Affairs in the Obama administration. And so he was the friend who invited Ballard in for a meeting. And so the two sat down, and they had known each other, guys, for so many years. They met in naval intelligence, and so they were longtime friends. So Campbell really excitedly ushered Ballard into his office, and Ballard recalled that Campbell closed the door and said that he wanted to show him a photograph. And so he offered Ballard this black and white photo. And he said, well, do you see anything? What do you see? And so Ballard briefly described the photo. And it was actually a photo of an island with a ship on a reef, I should say. And so that was correct. That's what was in the photograph. But there was also something else to the far left of the photograph, and Ballard had to have another look at it because it was blurry. It was a blurred object. And so Campbell handed him a second digitally enhanced image, and he said the smudge was apparently landing gear from a Lockheed Model 10E Electra. The reef in the picture was part of a tiny Niku Maroro Island. It was taken on that island, guys, that we've been talking about. In other words, it was Garden Island. And so it was very much uninhabited. And this is the Phoenix Islands. And so then that's when Ballard began to change his mind, and he was incredibly overcome with this revelation that that would be where specifically he would search high and low for that gear. And so uh forget about the freckle cream, you know what I'm saying? He wanted to find something very definitely part of that flight. And so anyway, it was a precise place to start looking for Amelia's aircraft. And the reason why the photograph, which was very old and taken in 1937, was called the Bevington object is because it was taken by a British colonel officer in October 1937 whose name was Bevington. And so Bevington had been scouring the area of Gardner Island 3 months after Amelia disappeared. And so he was pretty dedicated to the mission. And so in that island, a British freighter had crashed there years before on the northwest corner. And so what did he do? He snapped a picture. And Bevington didn't know that as he was snapping that picture, guys, this is incredible. As he was snapping that picture, talk about time portals, eh? He also captured a little tiny fragment of what is supposedly the aircraft or the landing gear, a piece of the landing gear from Amelia's Electra. It's unbelievable. And so the Bevington object became known as a tiny speck near the edge of this photograph's frame, which happens to be the landing gear of an Electra plane. I'm just so incredibly amazed at this discovery. Hi guys, so I think I'm going to quickly get into the last part of the Amelia Earhart story and continuing with our discussion on the 2019 expedition. And so we were talking about the Bevington photograph and the Bevington object, and so which really pinned down the location of the search, where the plane might have landed. And so decades after 1937, when that Bevington object was photographed, it became circulated within an international group for historical aircraft recovery, which restores ancient and old aircrafts. And they are the ones that tried to process Bevington's photo. This group is dedicated to aviation archaeology and aircraft preservation, much like the way old castles and old buildings are preserved. And so it has been involved in searching Earhart, searching for Earhart at Gardner Island. And it had been involved previously in that. And so this photograph supported that group's mission as well. And so Uh, Looking for Amelia at Gardner Island was a big new trend in the archaeological field. And so fascination with her disappearance, as we have already seen in my last vlog, led to so many wild and incredible theories. Most incredible, the one where she would be an American spy for the Japanese and captured by them, and living out the rest of her days in secrecy as a New Jersey housewife. Well, I hope so. I hope so. And so there are many who do believe in the Gardner Island crash and sink theory. And they say it was, of course, along Amelia's planned navigation course. And you know, even whether she went missing there or not, she was flying above there. So the Navy followed, in 1937, they followed clues based on her distress calls, which we have heard, which I have related to you. And so they were dispatched to a battleship at Pearl Harbor called the Colorado in Hawaii. And so they were instructed to search the Phoenix Islands. And Gardner Island was one of these Phoenix Islands. So, but Ballard and his researchers believed that tides could have dragged the plane deeper by the time the search crew arrived at Gardner Island. So according to an official report, one pilot claimed to have seen signs of very recent habitation at this island, which had been allegedly virtually empty for 40 years, meaning that people lived and died there before 1937. And so nobody waved those signs down. Why? I don't understand that. I don't understand it. And so the search team left, and the Navy dismissed the theory that there were signs of life there. Why? I don't understand it. Was it searched? No, I don't think so. But that's besides the point. All these years and century later, they still can't find anything. So what sailors didn't know was that the island had been uninhabited at that time for 40 years. So whatever was taken to be as recent habitation, well, I think to me it would have stuck out like a sore thumb, but I don't know. You're looking for signs of life, and if you see it, you don't wave it down. So others say that it's unlikely that this is the island where Amelia landed and where her life ended. And I would be rather inclined to probably agree with that, because if she was indeed captured, her life didn't end there. And so her bones would not be there. Dorothy Cochrane, the curator for General Aviation, Aviational National Air and Space Museum, believes that Amelia crashed near Howland Island, Amelia's original destination, hundreds of miles northwest of Gardner. But in 2010, a notion that this site was Niku Maroro rose when Glickman, a forensic imaging expert, spotted the blur in this old Bevington photo and concluded it was consistent with Lockheed Electra landing gear. And this is where things start popping all the way back up to the surface after 1937. And so armed with this clue, this guy went to Campbell, the old friend of Ballard, and he wanted an opinion in addition to this museum person. And so Campbell then shared it the photo with the National Geographic, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, who is, they are a place where they use classified technology to analyze stuff like this, like unidentified things. You know what I'm saying? So it was digitally enhanced and sent to the Pentagon intelligence. And they analyzed it and concluded that this object indeed looked like landing gear from the Lockheed Model 10 Electra. So, can you imagine that Amelia used to rub elbows at the White House? And she was quite familiar and close to the Roosevelts. So I imagine that their files must be so thick with this case, and I'm sure that they do want to find her. She is an American hero, and I'm sure that they want to get to the bottom of this. And so Campbell called Ballard and in 2012 to get support for this new mission to Gardner Island. And it had been one of a dozen already made there. But with this photo, things were different. And they had a very narrowed search pattern set out for them. However, this 2012 expedition was ultimately unsuccessful. It didn't yield anything, guys. Ultimately, when this group went to Ballard, it was because they didn't have the funding or the capabilities that he did. And so, in addition to his 60 years of experience, his ship, the Nautilus, was well equipped with high-definition cameras, a 3D mapping system, and remotely operated underwater gear, which can descend 20,000 feet. So with that ship already up and running in the Pacific and having completed recent campaigns, besides that, Ballard could focus with the appropriate equipment on this new mission to search for Amelia. But this expedition would be very, very difficult. For example, from above, Nuku Maroro seems very small and flat, but it is actually a plateau. You can only see the plateau of a very steep underwater mountain rising 10,000 feet from the ocean. So this mountain starts at the bottom of the ocean. So can you imagine how difficult and impossible it would be to search that? So Amelia would have landed, or the plane would have landed on the edge of that island. And Ballard, that's what Ballard believed. And as the tides rose, her plane slipped down under the underwater slope. And yeah, of course, if that's where it landed, yes. And actually, that is probably why she crashed, if she did, because it was not clearly visible from the air. It could have looked like smoke, and she probably drove into it. And plus, she was out of gas, if that's what happened. So, yeah, the weather conditions are a big part of this crash and sink theory. And so, imagine how difficult it would be to search this mountain in the dark, because in water there is no dark, there is no light. And it would be like going into a volcano at night with a little wee flashlight and searching for a plane or bones or debris, whatever they were looking for. Impossible, right? Imagine doing that underwater with no light, and you can't breathe, of course. Um, I don't know how they did it. So Gillespie feared that what was left of the Electra might be no more than debris. Well, of course, I'm sure that's the case. Still, Ballard's technology gave hope. Maybe they were looking for a serial number or the color or a part like they did with the landing gear that would put it all together nicely. But I'm glad that they looked. So even those who doubted the Gardner Island hypothesis did admire Ballard's high-tech search, and they thought, well, if she wasn't there, this will prove it. Well, no, not really. You can't prove that she was there. You can't prove that she wasn't there. It was fruitless. Without evidence, you can't prove anything. So, what I'm saying is that his hypothesis and his search, his expedition, wasn't based on a hoax or a fallacy. It was based on real evidence analyzed by the intelligence. So I have to commend him. He did everything that he was supposed to do. And so the National Geographic Society funded the entire project, and they would record the progress of the whole Nautilus ship crew for a 2019 documentary. And so it would, I believe that documentary did air. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that it aired, but I never caught it. And so I should look for it online. And so Dr. Ballard would share leadership in the Nautilus program with Alison Fundis, who was also an explorer. And she was very thrilled to be part of it all. So Ballard, even though nothing really tangible ever came of this, Ballard did feel strongly about promoting women, especially as the Nautilus searched the ocean for what everybody believed was history's greatest female pioneer in aviation. And she was, guys. She was not only that, she was a pioneer in women's politics, education. She was a lot. I think, she had a wonderful attitude, and she did have a tough life, but she had a lot of support and loving people around her, and so that made a difference. And so that is how Ballard's perspective differed from that of the Navy's in 1937. I think if Ballard had been in charge of that crew, even though he wasn't a Navy person, we might have had maybe a bit more of an idea to go on. The two explorers, Allison and Ballard, were very confident that they would find the Electra. Well, they had the proper equipment, but it wasn't the right environment for debris to hang around for 100 years. And so, most likely everybody was thinking that the plane would be destroyed into bits and shreds, like the sub, the Titan sub was. And so, planes then were so delicately built, it never would have survived a crash in big chunky pieces. Even though so many years and decades had passed, those pieces, wherever they went, would surely be buried under mounds and mounds of sand and landslides. So underwater at that. Not easy. And so what about the forensic evidence and the Nuku-Maroro crash and sink theory? Well, all of these expeditions, 2012 and 2019, were based on the supposition that Amelia dispersed along with a plane in a crash and sink theory. And so it is, what I'm trying to say is that even though there was no forensic evidence found, it was a valid expedition. So the photograph validates the evidence that Gardner Island is where it all happened. Whatever happened, it happened there. And so Amelia gave off distress calls right around this island. And so that is also a very supportive theory that would validate the location. And so Gillespie he went over this 2018 report done by Ballard, and because he thought that maybe, by then I believe Ballard had passed away, maybe, I don't know when Ballard did pass away. So anyway, in any case, what I mean to say is that Ballard did a 2018 report that Gillespie wanted to review, because it was possible that Ballard found other things that he wasn't able to draw too much conclusions on because they didn't connect to the whole picture. So he wanted to see if Ballard missed anything. You know what I'm saying? You know, when you're looking at something and you don't really know what it is until you see something else that connects with it. That's what I'm saying. So there are several inconclusive clues that point to the islands as the place where Amelia and Fred crashed. And this is where it gets iffy, guys. Bones. Most likely and most notably, there were bones left on the island. Really? And so these bones were found by a professor at the University of Tennessee, Department of Anthropology, in 1940. And he did an independent study, not with anybody else, not with the any other expedition, just on his own. And he published his findings in the Forensic Anthropology. And so it concluded that Amelia's bones would be very similar to the ones that were found on the beach. So, guys, Amelia transpired in the air, in the ocean, but her bones are on the beach. Did she bounce? He said they were similar. They were more similar than 99% of a reference sample. To what? A reference sample to what? Amelia's bones? You see where I'm going with this? I take this study with a big grain of salt. You see, lost bones, to me, they hold no merit. They certainly don't validate an unvalidated theory. So human bones matching dimensions of lost ones that were found in a museum on the island of Tarawa were a good match. Well, how do we know? We didn't see any bones. And so the researchers at the University of South Florida wanted to conduct DNA testing to see if they belonged to Earhart or Amelia. And so Gardner Island is currently the only hypothesis that has tangible evidence to support it. That was in 1940. What about the Bevington photograph? Well, I guess it hadn't surfaced yet. To me, guys, it's not tangible. It's not. Alleged bones, they're gone now. So, indeed, a proper scientific hypothesis can be wrong, especially if there is compelling evidence of her existence elsewhere. In any case, there isn't. So this team of the University of South Florida remains hopeful that they will eventually find a plane. Oh yes, all intact in one piece, just waiting. No, bits of it maybe. Um, I think if it's in the ocean, they're not going to find it, um, because it won't look like anything. So they have to eventually, if they find a plane and explore an alternate theory that she crashed close to Highland Island, Amelia's next planned refueling spot would have been the place. So, maybe. I don't know. One last thing. Okay, so bits of an airplane would indeed disintegrate over a century of time, especially in salt water, the way titanium does. But an engine itself would never, ever disintegrate. So I think maybe that's what we should key in on. The actual motor and engine, unless, of course, it was simply taken away and put into somebody else's airplane. That's a big one, huh? Okay, so there you have it in a great big nutshell. The expedition, which was failed, it didn't yield anything, but it was such an honorable and well-intentioned and firmly backed expedition. You have the museum, you have the National Geographic, you have the photos. It's all there. Nothing was found. That doesn't mean that it's hogwash. No, it just means it wasn't found, simply. And as for what I believe that indeed she crashed into the mountain. The mountain was not visible, especially with those clouds. And if she was supposed to be driving through smoke signals, and the clouds were there looking like smoke signals, and she hit the mountain, I'm almost, seeing it right now in front of my eyes. Whether she was running out of gas or not, I really do think that there was something there. Now, if the photograph was a hoax, who knows? Just because it was done in 1937, it could have been somebody else's landing gear put there for, it was done in 1937. I don't know. I don't have those facts. However, we don't know where she went. We don't know what she did. But I do kind of believe in a crash and sink theory because it would explain the disappearance, the utter disappearance. Look at what happened to the 5 passengers of the Titan sub that imploded. Are we going to go and look for them? Seriously. We know what happened. If we look for them, how are we going to know what's them? You know what I mean? It's the same thing as looking for a plane in the bottom of the ocean. How are we going to know that little piece of something over there is not a shell or a lobster tail, whatever, about part of a plane? We don't know. It's impossible to search everything that thoroughly when you're under the ocean. So that's it for tonight, guys. I hope that you've enjoyed this vlog. I hope that you enjoyed watching me at my work, which wasn't much of a walk. It's a horrible day. And thank you very much for listening and watching. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.
Obviously, research regarding technological